Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning.
Welcome back to One Hit Wonderland, where we take a look at the full careers of artists who wound up remembered for only one song. This week we're going back to 1974, a year that I've read many writers describe as the worst year in pop music history. I don't think I'd agree, not when we've got 1980, 1990, and 2001 to compare it to. But they make a decent case for 74, the year that brought us Seasons in the Sun, The Night Chicago Died, I Honestly Love You, You're Having My Baby, Mockingbird. Really, that's a pretty solid platter of shit. But I've also seen that list of awful songs from 1974 include Kung Fu Fighting, the magnum opus of one Carl Douglas. And I'll straight up tell you right now, if you don't like Kung Fu Fighting, the problem is you. So if I have to, I'm going to hold you down and judo chop some goddamn knowledge into you, because y'all need to know the importance of this wonderful, magnificent track, even if the only thing fast as lightning about its singer was his length of time in the spotlight. Let's take a look. Okay, I don't have a lot of info here about Carl's life before Kung Fu Fighting. I literally can't find any single picture of Carl Douglas where he's not wearing a karate uniform and a headband. But here's what I've gathered. He's originally from Jamaica, and in fact I think he might be the first Jamaican ever to have a hit in America, so eat that, Jimmy Cliff. He moved to London in the mid-60s and recorded some singles that didn't do anything, and by the early 70s he was a session musician for Pi Records. But the major player in the build-up to Carl Douglas' success is not so much Douglas himself as it is this man, a young musician known only as Biddu. Biddu would go on to become a big name in the 70s British pop scene and later as a composer for Bollywood movies, but for then he was just a struggling producer looking for his first hit. He made acquaintance with Douglas at some point, and when he needed a singer for his new song, he called in Carl to his studio where they made the song that would take them right to the top of the charts. I Want to Give You My Everything. I don't know if they knew it yet, but Biddu was on the forefront of what would become the defining sound of the decade, disco, which was just starting to pop up right around this time, making I Want to Give You My Everything one of the first of the genre. It was written by Larry Weiss, who wrote several hit pop songs, and you know what? This song is pretty good. Biddu and Carl Douglas had little doubt that this song was their ticket to the big time. And also because they needed to have something on the B-side, they threw together some silly track about Bruce Lee movies in like 10 minutes. The record executives decided that the B-side should be the single instead. To this day, Biddu says he has no idea why or how Kung Fu Fighting got big. And let's be clear here, it was very big. #1 in America and England, 11 million records sold. How?
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Okay, well, let's take a look at it. First off, keep in mind that this was put together by a Jamaican singer and an Indian producer in London. I'm gonna guess neither of these people know all that much about East Asian culture, although I read Carl say once that he had Chinese cousins. Chinese Jamaicans are a thing, I looked it up. But yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is not a song written out of a deep love or understanding of ancient Chinese traditions.
There was funky Chinaman from funky Chinatown.
Now, if I had to guess what made this song so big, I think a part of it was that they made it with expert timing. You see, Kung Fu had basically just become popular in the Western world. Enter the Dragon was released the year before, and the 70s martial arts craze was in full force by 1974. And Carl Douglas, I think, was one of the first people to make the connection between Kung Fu and funk music. See, I have this theory. Black people love Kung Fu. In fact, according to what I've read, the Kung Fu craze might have quickly just burnt itself out if not for black audiences who kept it alive. Turns out the same theaters that were showing all these classic blaxploitation movies were also showing martial arts movies. Kung Fu movies were low-budget independent films, they were usually about fighting the man, they didn't star Whitey, so they fit right in. And right around this time, you started getting your first Kung Fu-themed blaxploitation movies. All of which goes to support my theory, black people love Kung Fu. So Kung Fu Fighting could be described as a theme song to a movie that was never made. But of course it wouldn't really have made for a good theme for any real martial arts movie, or blaxploitation movie for that matter, because it's too damn silly.
They were chopping them up, they were chopping them down.
Both Sonny Chiba and Superfly would demand more dignity than Carl Douglas could provide, although once we actually did start getting silly kung fu movies, it started showing up on soundtracks all the time. So, this is not a song that's some kung fu badass's theme music, and it's certainly not some East meets West cross-cultural fusion like Carl Douglas has said it is. No, this is a song about kung fu, as written by a kung fu movie fanboy. He just left the theater, and he wants to tell you all the cool parts. If you sub out some of these names with Ninja Turtles characters, this could be exactly a conversation I had with friends when I was 7. I mean, whatever you want to say about kung fu fighting, Carl Douglas is definitely committed to delivering it properly. It just goes so over the top with the hus and the ha's. And the whole reason it works is because Carl Douglas delivers it with such fanboy enthusiasm. I can't help it. This stupid little song just puts a smile on my face every time I hear it. More importantly, kung fu fighting lives on because it was the first time anyone set to music one of the deep, abiding truths of life, which is that kung fu is totally awesome. Martial arts movies are still here, and they're still kicking ass, which is probably why kung fu fighting is still around while Convoy and Disco Duck are not. Not that Carl Douglas could have known that at the time. For all he knew, he'd written a song about a fad that had the cultural lifespan of Shrinky Dinks. I mean, you compare it to I Want to Give You My Everything, which was supposed to be the big hit and was this heavily orchestrated, opulent-sounding record, and instead your big success is this ludicrous thing. Carl certainly didn't have any qualms about riding kung fu fighting success as far as it would go, but wasn't there more to the guy? The trouble with only having one hit is that it has the unfortunate effect of giving the public at large a very narrow definition of your work, and oftentimes people get an entirely wrong impression. If all you know of Devo is Whip It, for example, you simply don't know their importance in the scope of their influence. And if all you know of Warren Zevon is Werewolves of London, you have an entirely inaccurate understanding of his work. Carl Douglas is not that kind of artist.
Oh, dance the kung fu. You just dance the kung fu. Dance the kung fu.
I basically started this project just to find songs like this. I am so happy right now.
Every step is poetry in motion.
I suppose it's possible that this was inflicted on Carl by his record executives, but from everything I can find out about the guy, I get the impression that he decided to just take his claim to fame and run with it. And if people like one song about Kung Fu, clearly they'll like 2 songs about Kung Fu.
This new dance, people, is pure dynamite.
I read somewhere Carl was hoping that this was going to start a full-on dance craze like The Hustle, and I deeply wish I could see the alternate universe where that plan worked, because I don't know what Carl was thinking. That was pretty clearly never going to happen. Like, ever. A song about Kung Fu, maybe you can get away with that if you have a really catchy tune. But a dance about Kung Fu? Well, that's just stupid, right?
On the contrary, dancing the Kung Fu is one of the finest and deepest traditions in all of martial arts. Listen to Carl Douglas's detailed instructions on this ancient ritual.
Sweet to your left, and you're sweet to your right.
First, you swing to the left, then you swing to the right.
Put your hand to the hand, then you make a little stand.
Put your hand to the hand, make a little stand, you jump and dip with your back up stiff.
This is all you do. Oh, dance the kung fu.
Then you dance the Kung Fu, dance the Kung Fu, dance the Kung Fu, and dance the Kung Fu.
Wow, every move really is poetry in motion. Thanks, Kung Tai Ted.
No problem.
Don't fight, dance the kung fu. You can do this new dance for hours and hours and hours.
One or two things, I guess. His album was titled Kung Fu Fighting and Other Great Love Songs, which is pretty hilarious and suggests to me that he was in on the joke. His only other released single from that album was a disco instrumental called Blue-Eyed Soul. But I find myself much more interested in an album cut he wrote called Witchfinder General. I'm gonna go ahead and assume this is about the Vincent Price movie, unless there's something about the culture of England in the 1600s that inspires him to write songs. He released 2 more albums in the 70s. His only other song to come anywhere near the charts on either side of the Atlantic was something called Run Back. It's okay. Honestly, I wish he just kept it up and made more songs based on movies he'd seen. That could have been great. Like, he could make a cowboy song, or a gangster movie song, or a slasher movie song. Everybody was getting killed by a crazy axe murderer. Oh, what a waste. The last time that Carl Douglas made any kind of prominent appearance was when British dance act Bus Stop did a remake of his only hit, and he showed up in the video. Other than that, he hasn't made much of an impact. He pops up every now and then to sing his big song, and several sources say he runs a publishing house in Germany now, but I couldn't find any outside confirmation for that. And that's about it as far as his career goes. No! No. Well, I mean, he didn't deserve worse, I guess. He's not a bad singer, but considering how amazingly overstuffed the 70s was with great R&B music, I have difficulty thinking of him as an unfairly dismissed well of talent. He wasn't really a man overloaded with good looks, pop star charisma, or dignity.
Come on.
Maybe if things had turned out differently, Carl Douglas could have gotten Barry White's career, but I really just don't see it. Besides which, he doesn't seem to mind very much how his career wound up. If he's particularly disappointed that this was his only hit, he's never ever shown it. He showed up in that Bus Stop video. I found one quote from him where he says he's very proud of it, and on top of that, he released one more album in 2006 where he sings such gems as Return of the Fighter and Game of Death. Can't really feel particularly bad for him. It seems like he's perfectly fine with his legacy as a one-hitter. As well he should be. Kung Fu Fighting remains one of the great silly pop songs of all time.